Andi here. I'm a vintage home decor reseller, and today I'm going to share all the things I am no longer picking up for resale in my Etsy shop because they're just not selling. So I have a whole list of things we're going to cover today. I actually did a video previously about all the things that were selling for me in my Etsy shop, and then a lot of you asked, well, what about all the things that are not selling for you in your Etsy shop? So this is today's video. So if you watch my channel, you know that I sell primarily online through Etsy. So the stuff I'm going to tell you is just not what is selling for me online, but it may be selling for you in a booth setting, at market. So if it still works, definitely keep buying it. So as we go through this list, I'm going to tell you why I think it's not selling for me, or just generally why I think it's cooling down in the market. And then I'll kind of give you some alternatives or things to think about, because like everything, it's not hard and fast. Sometimes just certain things in a category are no longer selling, but other things are, and so we'll cover that too. Okay, so let's jump right into it. So I am no longer picking up anything Boho for resale. So Boho came on the scene several years ago. It was wildly popular. It was all the rattan furniture that you were seeing, all the macrame wall hangings, all the plants, the peacock chairs, just people lost their mind over this very carefree, very textural aesthetic, but I have seen that cooling off big time in interior design community. So now that Boho is kind of on its way out, these particular items that were quintessentially considered Boho are definitely on the downhill slope in terms of what people are interested in buying. In terms of some of the specific things that I'm no longer picking up within the Boho aesthetic are any sort of macrame wall hangings. Any of those woven wall hangings that have been super popular, I'm no longer picking those up. And that also includes those woven planter hangings as well. The reason why these have kind of gone out is, one, Boho's going out, but also the market just got overly saturated. For macrame, it used to be that you had to actually get something vintage because it came from the 1970s. Well, a lot of modern day makers were picking up the activity in macrame, and a lot of retailers were starting to mass produce them. And so all the vintage stuff was kind of not really that popular anymore because everyone was just so overseeing it. So there's going to be exceptions to all these rules, and the exception to the macrame rule, which means I'm not picking it up anymore, is anything that is made by a designer. Like Don Friedman, he's a really well-known fiber artist. He has some very popular macrame and woven wall hangings. So anything made by him is still worth picking up because it's collectible. Another thing within the Boho aesthetic, rattan furniture, peacock chairs, those things are definitely on a downward slope because they just got super saturated. Now, if you find one of the very ornate big peacock chairs, I mean, I still think it's worth picking up just because they're very hard to find now, and I've only ever found one at a certain price point. So because they're so rare to find, I still think they're kind of worth picking up if you're kind of a collector. But I would say for the most part, people aren't as interested in using them in their homes. And the final thing within this Boho aesthetic are wall baskets. So everyone had a basket wall. It was so hot. People were scrambling to collect just the perfect baskets to hang in a pattern on their wall, a gallery wall of baskets. And I'm just not seeing people doing that anymore. I think because, again, we just saw it so much. If you went on Instagram, I swear every other picture was of a basket wall. And so people are no longer interested in buying these because basket walls are pretty well consider on their way out. So the exception to this no more baskets for basket walls rule really are any sort of basket that is made by a particular type of people. So for example, Native American baskets, those are still going to be very popular. There's a lot of baskets that are made in Africa that are very popular and collectible. So those baskets you could still pick up, but any generic basket that doesn't seem to have any sort of origin with an actual maker or a tribe, those are not worth picking up anymore. So lighting has just changed, as you can see. Now the sun is shining directly onto my face, so let me just change angles really quick. Okay, so that pretty much sums up why I'm no longer picking up anything that kind of falls into that Boho aesthetic. Is on its way out, like I said, and I want to make sure my Etsy shop and what I'm picking up is in alignment with current design trends. So the next category I'm really not picking up anymore is studio pottery. And this is kind of an example of studio pottery, and this is an example of studio pottery. Really anything that's made by a no-name artist, I'm not picking up. Now I used to pick up a lot of this. You guys know that if you're like an original subscriber. I actually had someone reach out to me recently that was rewatching my old videos, and they said, yeah, you used to pick up so much pottery, why don't you do it anymore? And the reason is it just isn't selling. So the reason why I think it's no longer selling for me is because basically retailers got hot on the scent that everyone wanted, you know, this amazing handmade pottery, and they started mass producing it in large quantities. And you could get some really interesting on-trend pieces at like your local home goods. So the exception to the no pottery is of course collectible pottery. These transcend, you know, trends because people are picking them up because they just like them, or pottery made by an actually like well-known ceramicist or artist. Those types of pieces are always going to be popular and therefore worth picking up. So some examples of collectible pottery are like your Tonala pottery in Mexico, or your Potosi pottery from Italy, or your French pottery and crocs, you know, things like that. Those are always going to be of interest because they kind of transcend the trends. But any sort of like just one-off studio pottery, like someone's rudimentary mug, that used to sell, and that type of stuff is just not moving anymore. So the next thing that is not selling for me, which really like came on hot and then died off just as quick for me, were people statues. So when I say people statues, it's like these family statues. So like two people embracing. They were so popular, I could not keep them in stock. And now I just like, I'm not even picking them up because again, it was just this trend that just took off and then totally nosedived. So pieces like this are still worth picking up, and I still think actually like busts in particular have a little bit more of a trajectory upwards, but things like this that are family related are definitely going downhill. Okay, so the next things that I'm not picking up is not really any one particular item, it is just a size of item, and that is anything mini and small. I am not picking up. And this is killing me personally because you guys know if you watch my channel, I love a miniature. I love a miniature painting, a miniature pottery. I love miniature brass figurines. I love all that stuff. No, I will pick them up for myself because I like them, but I used to also pick them up for resale, and it just didn't make sense because the margins were not there. So here are some examples of like mini things that I would pick up because I just think they're so cute and I can't pass them up. But the problem is, things like this just don't sell for a lot. You know, you're just not gonna charge a lot of money. And so for me, who sells primarily online on Etsy, it doesn't make sense for me to spend an hour photographing this, styling this, uploading this, only to list it for what? At max, like $20? I mean, that's just silly. That's too much time for something that is, you know, too small and doesn't have a lot of margin. And so I'm trying to keep that in mind, just because it's hard, because like I said, I like picking them up because I'm interested in it. And while I always advise people to pick up things that, you know, that they, you know, are attracted to and they like because you're more excited about your inventory. And when you're more excited about your inventory, you're more likely to list it. But these things just don't make sense to list on Etsy. In a booth setting, you could have these types of pieces in there, but these are also the things that easily slip into a pocket, into a coat, and are easily stolen. And so that's the other reason why I kind of suggest to people that miniatures are a bit trickier. I mean, you can always have the glass cases and keep the items in there, but just know, like, these are the things that go missing all the time from booths, and these are the things that just don't make sense from a margin perspective to pick up. So the reason why I'm mentioning margins in this video is because, you know, it's the beginning of the year and we always want to do like a little bit of a business reset. And that's one thing when I was reflecting on last year and what I was buying in my inventory and what sold, I realized I'm like, you know what? As much as I like smalls, they just aren't selling. And you just always need to have that critical eye when you're looking and buying things for your shop. Is it worth the time and effort? I'm a marketing consultant, and so I'm always thinking about my time in terms of billable hours because that's how I do my client work. And so for me, like, to spend all that time to only make like 10 bucks on an item because I'm listing it online just doesn't make sense. So that's one thing I'm trying to do moving forward this year, is to make sure that I am picking up inventory that is, you know, I'm going to be making, you know, a lot more money on. So where before I was like, okay, I'd be willing to sell something for like 28 bucks. I can bring things down like to that low, because then it kind of makes sense, but it really doesn't. So now, if it's under 38, I am just not picking it up. And I would definitely encourage you to kind of think of those things when you're outsourcing, like, is this worth my time? And finally, I am no longer picking up things that I personally do not want to ship. Now, I know, again, this is not a particular item specifically, but this is also important in terms of the reseller mindset of making sure you're not picking up things that are automatically a barrier for you in terms of listing it or getting it out the door. I don't like to ship furniture pieces. I barely want to ship a stool. Anything where I have to make my own box is just automatically something I tend to sit on, because I know if I list it, then I'm going to have to pack it once it sells. And that to me is just like, I don't want to do that, but I can't help it because I always want to pick up these pieces. So this year I'm going to try not to buy anything that I know I'm going to struggle to ship, because it's just not worth the mental stress. And the problem is, the bigger the item that you're selling, like furniture pieces, usually are the pieces that have the most margin when you're selling. If you can, buy a furniture piece, like a designer furniture piece for a few $100, you can sell it for a few $1,000. That obviously, makes sense in terms of like your business. But if you hate packaging stuff like that up and it gives you a huge headache, it may not be worth the money. And so that's what I'm trying to remind myself, is that, Andi, you do not want to ship a bench. Even though you're capable of shipping that bench, you don't want to, and it's not worth the hassle and the stress. So that's another thing I'm trying to think about as I'm sourcing for my shop, is that I need to make sure that I am choosing pieces that I am excited to ship to the customers. Okay, so those are all the things that I'm no longer picking up, the things that I'm no longer doing when I'm trying to source product for my Etsy shop. I would love to know what items are just not selling for you guys. And if there's something that is no longer selling for me that you think are still worth picking up, let me know in the comments below, because like I said, you never know what could sell for me, may not sell for you, what could sell for you, may not sell for me. So it's always very interesting to hear your perspective. If you're looking for more thrifting, reselling, decorating content between my videos here on YouTube, make sure you check me out on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks again for watching, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. Take care.